Kuzangpo and a very warm welcome to Bhutan This Week, our weekly news magazine program where we take a look at the week gone by. I'm Tenzin Rabki. Our top stories this week. His Majesty the King graced the closing of the National Graduates Orientation Program. His Holiness the Jekhenpo consecrated the Tashi Dendeling Hlagang in Genekha in Thimphu. And Prime Minister Tsering Topge says signing of the performance agreements is not compulsory for local leaders. His Majesty the King granted an audience to over 2,300 university graduates who attended the National Graduates Orientation Program, which ended last Friday.
His Majesty told the graduates that Bhutanese are fortunate to have been born in such a beautiful and a blessed country. His Majesty said Bhutan's true treasure is its people.
We are still the generation of nation builders. Not for a second should we think that we are very fortunate, our ancestors, the kings, and during 34 years of Duge Jiba's glorious reign, there were so many accomplishments, the country's foundation is firm, strong, and we automatically have a great future. They are past achievements and we should be proud of it. But if we are to succeed in the 21st century, it requires for us to be intelligent, to take the right decisions, and to navigate through change, to know what we want in terms of national goals, objectives, accordingly be tactful about formulating good strategies, plans, and have the determination and the focus to be able to implement those plans.
His Majesty also spoke about the need to assess the quality of education in the country and to ensure that it endows the youth with the capability to be independent and successful in the future. His Majesty also shared concerns about employment, the need to improve the quality of life of every Bhutanese and to ensure that everyone receives equal opportunities. His Majesty also reminded the graduates of some of the country's most important national objectives. His Majesty said one of the most important goals is to protect the sovereignty of the nation. The other national goal, His Majesty said, is to maintain peace through unity. His Majesty added equitable development and equal access to opportunities, self-reliance, and a strong democracy which would consolidate the country's future are other important national objectives. Prime Minister Tsering Topge, the Labour Minister, and senior government officials were also present.
His Holiness the Jekhenpo consecrated the Tashi Dendeling Hlagang in Genekha in Thimphu. Hundreds of locals attended the ceremony. The Hlagang, which took 6 years to complete, was constructed at the cost of more than 8 million yoltrum. The land on which the Hlagang is constructed was offered by a private individual. Locals attending the consecration ceremony also received Nidrup Hawang from His Holiness the Jekhenpo. A few local leaders refusing to sign the performance agreement with the Dzongkhaks was discussed at the Meet the Press, a monthly meeting of journalists, the Prime Minister and the Cabinet. Remarking on this, Lenchen Tsering Topge said that no one is forced to sign the performance agreement. The Prime Minister said that the targets set in the agreements have in no way been dictated by him. With regard to the budget allocation of the Gyeok development grants, Lenchen said that what is reflected in the performance agreements are achievable within the present resources.
Not all local governments have signed contracts and they don't have to. Those that have signed, I've looked at them. And many are doable because they are small activities within existing budgets and definitely within the 20 lakhs of the Gyeok development grant. If local governments have signed performance agreements with their respective Dzongdas, and if the Dzongdas feel that those performance agreements cannot be fulfilled, I should know. They should tell me, the Dzongdas or the local governments. But to dismiss the performance agreements in the public domain without a single complaint to me, but publicly on BBS television.
It has been nearly 3 weeks since 4 Bhutanese were kidnapped from Sarbang. The perpetrators and the family members are still in negotiation to release the men. The government, in the meantime, is in dialogue with Indian officials and security forces to safely release the victims.
The 4 men, 2 farmers from Nobugang village and 2 students of Sarbang High Secondary School have been under the custody of the perpetrators since the 7th of August. Till date, family members have received 6 calls from the abductors. The family members of those kidnapped are helpless as the ransom demanded by the perpetrators are beyond their means. The government in the meantime has said that they cannot take the matter in their hands directly as the perpetrators are not in Bhutanese soil. The Prime Minister, however, said that they are in dialogue with officials in Delhi and the security forces.
The kidnappers are basically trying to extract money from Bhutanese citizens. Again, I repeat, if they were in Bhutanese territory, in our sovereign territory, we can do a lot more. We would have a lot more options, but they are not. And therefore, we are limited to the option of working through the Indian government and the security forces, which has proven to be very effective in the past, and we have no cause to doubt that the effectiveness has been compromised.
The Home and Cultural Affairs Minister said that the government has beefed up patrolling team along the southern borders to prevent such incidences since a similar incident was reported in 2012. Digichorin Doji, PBS News.
The much debated Business Opportunity and Information Centre has officially come into being. The launch of the BOIC will mean Bhutanese will now be able to access loans at a maximum of 8 million nultrums to start businesses. The Bhutan Development Bank will be giving out the loans. The Finance Ministry and the Royal Monetary Authority released 1.9 billion nultrum from the Economic Stimulus Plan for the centre.
The Business Opportunity and Information Centre was formally launched by Prime Minister Singh Tomge and the Indian Ambassador to Bhutan, Gautam Bambawale. Singh Tomge said that every individual should take the opportunity to avail themselves of the services and help contribute to country's economy.
균들 톱니기 탑람 유블레텐디기베 데 콘루에 펜토니메 세슈니 대들에 마저기 나진 록투수 배체 토티디타니다 데 라요기 고갑 쇠니기 던달래야 데 펜질 한잡기 차시나루 데 콘루에 잡줄 유블레텐디기베 콘루 펜토.
From the total of 1.9 billion nultrum, 1.5 billion will be for cottage and small manufacturing industries, which will create at least 3,000 jobs. And the rest is for non-formal rural activities that will guarantee about 4,000 jobs.
In the period of 5 years, we have set a limited number of opportunity, but however, if we receive more proposals, which are untranslated well, worthy, then we will report to the committee. Then it's the committee that decides to take in any numbers of proposal.
There's no free money. We are not going to dole out free money. The loan that we provide, the fund service that we provide has to be accounted for. It is the resource of the public, and the responsibility and the mandate of managing this resource is resting upon the BOIC. So therefore, BOIC has ensured that people are held accountable for the fund services that they would benefit from this BOIC.
The Prime Minister also launched an official website of the centre. BOIC was established last December as a time-bound autonomous agency to promote the growth of cottage and small manufacturing activities and non-formal rural activities within the country. Namge Wangchuk, PBS News.
Just a day after its launch, some 80 entrepreneurs walked into the office of the Business Opportunity and Information Center, while over 500 people hit the center's website since its launch on the 27th of this month.
This is 73-year-old Kona. He came all the way from Tashicholing Dungkhak in Samche to get some idea from the center.
I have planned to produce bricks. The Dungkhak and Dzongkhak were both supportive. The Dungkhak said we import more bricks every year, so to cut down import of bricks and reduce the outflow of rupee, I am starting a brick factory.
Like Kona, 26-year-old Sring Tomke, a private employee, has also come to the center with the hope of opening a mineral water manufacturing unit.
Our country has the rich water resource, so we should not waste it. If we can utilize the water resource and export it to a neighboring country, it can help boost the country's economy as well as give jobs to our youths.
But all they need now is a guarantor to get the loans.
There is no mortgage, but the guarantor is required. I don't think anybody will be interested to pay my debt. That's one of our concerns. It would be better if the center could scrutinize the projects well and release the fund. No one will be willing to be a guarantor.
The center said it is to make the scheme of guarantor different from those in financial institutions.
Given that it's a very low interest rate mula, and we had to put some mechanism in place to make sure that that we get back the money that we actually finance. So this was actually used, the guarantor scheme is actually used as a pressure. So we thought maybe if we had a guarantor, then if that person, the client doesn't pay us, then we could actually go after the guarantor, and then maybe the guarantor will then push the client to maybe pay, or so that is the mechanism we have in place.
Looking at the number of people at the center, it looks like they are aware of the criteria. Entrepreneurs need not necessarily come to center in Thimphu. They can get the services in Dzongkhak's and office of Bhutan Development Bank across the country. Namgyewangchuk, BBS News.
The Royal Civil Service Commission declared the result of the BCSE 2014 preliminary examination on Thursday. The cut-off percentage is 50%. From a total of over 2,800 university graduates who sat for the exam, just over 1,200 qualified for the main exam. The main exam will begin on 10th October. The preliminary exam is conducted to test the minimum standard required for a candidate to appear for the main examination. Meanwhile, the Education Ministry has granted education loans to 89 students to pursue their degree programs in Bhutan and India. The 2014 student loan scheme received more than 200 online applications. The selected students are entitled to full tuition fees, which will be directly released to the college, and a living allowance of 1,500 Ngultrum a month. The loan scheme is mainly targeted for those who come from economically disadvantaged backgrounds. All applicants had to have a minimum of 50% in English plus 3 best subjects. The Education Ministry said students were selected based on the level of parental support, siblings, education backgrounds of the family members, the family residence, and the poverty level. The Class 12 results of the students were also assessed. The results are available on the Education Ministry's website. The Anti-Corruption Commission has suspended 10 immigration inspectors and 2 officers in Pinseling for allegedly involving in bribery in the processing of work permits and embezzlement, among others. 21 foreign worker recruitment agencies in Pinseling were also suspended. The case was exposed last year when the ACC investigated a case involving several taxi drivers, police and immigration inspectors in illegal exit of foreign workers. Other corrupt practices include bribery in the processing of work permits based on false identity papers, bribery on the cancellation of work permits from the system, and route permit and embezzlement, among others. Dashunetin Zangmo, the chairperson of the Anti-Corruption Commission, recently spoke to me on a program saying that this would risk the security of the country, even undermining its sovereignty.
It's not only about one incidence or few incidences of people, the foreign workers leaving the country. Basically, they don't have the permit with them, but it's with their employers. So somehow, because of certain reasons, that they leave the country. But it's not just that. There are a host of issues, even people coming in illegally, yes, but facilitated by people, civil servants at the border point, or sometimes facilitated by the foreign workers in collusion with our service providers. Yes. So, and then plus people who finished their permit period, the tenure or the validity, and there again, instead of imposing penalties, how the penalties waived off in lieu of certain amount that they receive in bribe. So yes, it's a host of issues. So when you look at this, when people can come in and go and leave the country very freely, it definitely tells a big story of the risks, bigger risks, not just local risks, but national risks of security and even undermining the sovereignty. So when you look at the amount, it's very small. And yes, when you look at the people who are involved, they're also very small people. And often we have say there's big fish and small fish. And we make it appear as if the big ones are always the ones who are really going to stake the country's interest. Yes. But in this case particularly, it's a very telling story of how small fish can really stake the larger interests of the country.
Bhutan's drive for gender equality has made good progress in recent decades. But a new collaborative report of the National Commission for Women and Children, the Asian Development Bank, and the United Nations in Bhutan says the country's women are still lagging behind men in many areas.
The Minister of the Works and Human Settlement launched the report, the Bhutan Gender Equality Diagnostic of Selected Sectors, today. During the launch, Lempo said the report is an important milestone for all Bhutanese.
So far, we have been making plain statements on various gender issues with limited statistics and analysis. Now this report has critically examined and analyzed these statements. For example, on the matrilineal inheritance, which we claim to give more economic empowerment to women. Is this really true? Does it really give empowerment to the women? Or is such a customary practice just a burden to women?
The report is the first comprehensive analysis of gender equality and women's status in 8 selected sectors. It provides a platform to understand, plan and initiate interventions in these sectors. Francisco Toneri, the Principal Social Development Specialist of Asian Development Bank, shared there is no open discrimination in Bhutan, but women are held back by gender stereotypes and deep-rooted views about their roles in family and society. He mentioned that the report also goes deep down to the sectorial issues Bhutan face.
One of the myths is that not all sectors are potentially open to gender mainstreaming. But I think, as Bhutan teaches us, it is indeed not true. We can indeed take gender equality and women's empowerment approaches pretty much across all sectors. So that's one of the key elements of this report compared to other reports.
He also added that Bhutan can do a lot to improve gender equality and should mainly focus on tertiary education, employment and leadership roles for women in government. Christina Carlson, the UN resident coordinator in Bhutan, said that contrary to the general consensus, there is evidence that there are influential and deep-rooted gender stereotypes and norms that are largely invisible and greatly underestimated.
Transition from agriculture to other employment opportunities has been a much slower process for women than for men. And women remaining in agricultural work face particular challenges, including a heavier workload than their male counterparts. Moreover, Bhutanese women continue to remain poorly represented in decision-making positions, while tolerance for domestic violence by both sexes continues to remain high across all social groups.
Meanwhile, Bhutan's 11th five-year plan has mandated government agencies to implement gender-sensitive policies and mainstream gender in their programs. The Gender Inequality Index in the report shows that Bhutan is doing better than Nepal, Bangladesh, Pakistan and India. Sonam Chodan for BBS News.
People of Autso in Hlynsi are hopeful that the much-awaited town development might now take place soon. This is mainly because people have finally resolved the land disputes which delayed the process until today.
Located on the bank of Kurichu, this is Autso town in Hlynsi. The town planning here is delayed by over 10 years now. It is mainly because some landowners refuse to give their land for the town development.
The town planning started since 2003. A survey was conducted and land demarcated. But the problem was with the private land. I think this was one of the reasons why our town planning was delayed. However, developing Autso town has been our priority and was repeatedly discussed in the Dzongkhag Sokdu. If the town is finalized, it will not only help benefit the shopkeepers in town, but also help everyone.
And for all this while, the shopkeepers have been facing problems.
We have problems since we are not allowed to construct a house. We do not have enough space for our goods. Since we live in temporary huts, the place is not safe from burglars.
Even those of us who own plots, we don't get approval to construct houses. And there are no options for those who don't own plots.
Locals said people were not clear about the land pooling earlier, but now the problem is resolved. Meanwhile, the government is coming up with the final master plan soon. The town will be on 18 acres of land, where about 8 acres belong to private individuals. There are about 46 business license holders, while only about 35 are operational at the moment. King Rashi, BBS News, Mongar.
Well, that's all we have for you in this week's edition of Bhutan This Week. Until next week, at the same time, this is Tenzin Rapki saying goodbye.